Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Sachat, or Pra Ajahn Sachat Abhijato, who has given me the very special honor of being asked by him to record this book for you. This book was written by Pra Ajahn Sachat's own teacher, the Venerable Acariya Maha Boowa Nanasampanno, and is a spiritual biography written by him about his teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Buddhadatta Thera. The title of the book is Venerable Acariya Mun Buddhadatta Thera, a spiritual biography by Acariya Mahabhuwa Nanasampanno, and it was published in 2005, translated into English by Bhikkhu Dick Silaratano. If you would like to learn how to download or get a hard copy of this book, or a list of which pages or chapters are read on each separate recording, please listen to the beginning of the first recording of this book. This book, in any form, is to be given away for free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with, for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, as I'm still learning how to pronounce Thai and Pali, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We're resuming today on page 16. We are still in chapter 1, and this is the beginning of a subsection titled Acariya Sao Kanta Silo. In his early years of practice, Acariya Mun often wandered to Tonga in the company of Acariya Sao, comforted in the knowledge that he had a good, experienced teacher to lend him support. But when he asked his teacher to advise him on specific problems arising in his meditation, Acariya Sao invariably replied, "My experiences in meditation are quite different from yours. Your citta is so adventurous, tending always toward extremes. One moment it soars into the sky, only to plunge deep down into the earth the next. Then, after diving to the ocean floor, it again soars up to walk meditation high in the sky. Who could possibly keep up with your citta long enough to find a solution? I advise you to investigate these matters for yourself and find your own solutions." Acariya Sao never gave him enough concrete advice to really help him, so Acariya Mun was forced to solve his own problems. Sometimes he nearly died before discovering a way past some of the more intractable problems he faced. Acariya Mun described his teacher as someone with a smooth, serene temperament who inspired deep devotion. A rather strange feature of Acariya Sao's practice was his tendency to levitate while in samadhi, his body hovering quite noticeably above the floor. At first, doubtful that his body was indeed floating, he opened his eyes to see for himself. As soon as his eyes opened, concern about the condition of his body caused his citta to withdraw from samadhi. He promptly fell back to the floor, landing hard on his buttocks, which was sore and bruised for many days. In truth, his body did float about 3 feet above the floor. But by opening his eyes to check, he lost the mindfulness needed to maintain his citta in samadhi. Withdrawing suddenly from samadhi caused him to come crashing to the floor, like any other object dropped from a height. Practicing samadhi later and feeling his body levitate again, he kept mindfulness firmly focused within that state of samadhi, and then carefully opened his eyes to look at himself. It was obvious to him that he did levitate. This time, however, he didn't fall back to the floor, for mindfulness was present to maintain total concentration. This experience taught Acariya Sao a valuable lesson about himself. Yet being an exceptionally careful, meticulous person, he wasn't entirely convinced. So he took a small object, inserted it into the underside of the thatched roof in his hut, and continued to meditate. When he felt his body beginning to float again, He firmly focused his citta in samadhi, and he was able to float upward until he reached that small object in the thatch. Drawing level with it, he slowly reached out and very mindfully took it in his hand so that he could bring it back down by means of samadhi. This meant that once he had it in his grasp, he gradually withdrew from samadhi to the point where his body could slowly and safely descend to the floor, a point still short of complete withdrawal from samadhi. Experimenting like this, he became convinced of his ability to levitate, though this did not occur every time he entered samadhi. From the beginning of his practice to the end of his life, Acariya Sao's citta tended to have this smooth, imperturbable quality, in sharp contrast to the wholly adventurous nature that characterized Acariya Mun's citta. Unlike him, Acariya Sao was not so motivated to live dangerously, seeking adventure, nor did he tend to perceive the variety of unusual phenomena that Acariya Mun invariably did. Acariya Mun told us that once in ages past, Acariya Sao had resolved to become a Pacceka Buddha. Intensifying his efforts at meditation caused him to recollect his long-time resolution, and his lingering attachment to that goal made him reluctant to strive for Nibbana in the present. It soon became apparent that this vow would block any attempt to realize Nibbana in his lifetime. Therefore, he immediately decided to renounce the old vow. In its place, he resolved to attain Nibbana as soon as possible. He became determined to reach this goal within his present lifetime in order to avoid the misery of being reborn in the future. Having forsaken his original vow, and thus unhindered by previous commitments, his meditation practice progressed smoothly, until one day he finally reached the land of ultimate happiness that he had been aiming for. However, his teaching skill was very limited, probably due to a natural predisposition toward becoming a Pacceka Buddha, someone who has no inclination to teach others, although he is able to fully enlighten himself. Furthermore, the fact that he could so easily give up his original resolve and then achieve his new goal meant that his previous vow had not yet matured to the state of being irreversible. Acariya Mun related that in ages past he had made a similar resolution, in his case a solemn vow to become a Buddha. As with Acariya Sao, intensifying his efforts at meditation caused Acariya Mun to recollect this long-standing intention, and this underlying attachment made him reluctant to strive for the attainment of Nibbana in his present life. Acariya Mun renounced his vow to be a Buddha only after he began practicing Dhutanga Kammatthana, for he then realized that its fulfillment would take far too long. It required eons of traversing the round of samsara, being born, growing old, becoming ill, and dying over and over again, enduring misery and pain indefinitely. Renouncing the original vow relieved Acariya Mun of this concern, opening the way for his meditation to progress smoothly. The fact that he could so easily abandon the original vow indicates that it was not yet so firmly fixed in his conscious being that he couldn't detach himself from it. Acariya Mun often accompanied Acariya Sao on his excursions wandering Dhutanga across the provinces of the Northeast region. Due to differences in personality, their meditation experiences varied in some respects, but each very much enjoyed the other's company. By nature, Acariya Sao preferred to say very little. He was a reluctant teacher, especially of the laity. Occasionally obliged to give instruction to lay supporters, he was always very frugal with words. The little he did say could be summed up like this, quote, "You should renounce evil and cultivate goodness. Being fortunate enough to be born human, don't waste this good opportunity now. Our status as human beings is a very noble one. So avoid all animal-like behavior. Otherwise, you'll sink below the animals and be much more wretched as well. When you eventually fall into hell, your tortuous existence there will be far more grievous than that of any animal." so don't do evil." End quote. That said, he left his seat and returned to his hut, taking no further interest in anyone. He always spoke very sparingly. In an entire day, he might say only a few sentences. On the other hand, he could endure many hours of sitting and walking in meditation. He had a remarkably dignified, noble appearance that inspired respect and devotion. Just a glimpse of his serene, peaceful countenance made a lasting impression. He was greatly revered by monks and laity alike, and like Acariya Mun, he had many devoted disciples. It was well known that these two Acharyas shared immense love and respect for each other. In the early years, they enjoyed traveling in each other's company. They spent most of the year living together, both during and after the annual rainy season retreat. In the middle years, they normally spent these retreats in separate locations, but close enough to each other to make visiting easy. Very seldom, then, did they spend a retreat together, for each had an increasingly large following of disciples, making it difficult to find enough space to accommodate them all at one location. Living separately eliminated the burden of having to arrange living quarters for so many monks. Even when living apart, they often thought of each other with genuine concern. On occasions when Acariya Sao's disciples visited Acariya Mun, the first question he asked concerned the health and well-being of Acariya Sao, who in turn invariably reciprocated by inquiring about Acariya Mun's well-being when one of his disciples paid a visit. Through such messengers, each then conveyed his respectful greeting to the other, maintaining contact in this way at every opportunity. Each of these great Acharyas had enormous respect for the other's spiritual achievements. Both used words full of praise and admiration when speaking to their disciples about each other. Their comments never contained a hint of criticism. Acariya Mun wholeheartedly agreed with Acariya Sao's comment about his chitta being adventurous and tending to go to extremes, soaring high in the sky one moment, then plunging into the earth before diving to the ocean floor. His chitta truly did have such mercurial characteristics. Dropping into samadhi in the early stages of his practice, his chitta tended to focus outward then, perceiving all manner of unusual phenomena, things he had never dreamed of seeing. For example, he saw a bloated corpse laid out before him. As I have mentioned before, when he concentrated his attention on this image, it soon changed into a translucent disc, which in turn altered its form, creating an endless series of images. Even after discovering the correct method of practice, when his chitta converged into calm, it was still inclined to focus outward, perceiving countless types of phenomena. Sometimes he felt his body soaring high into the sky, where he traveled around for many hours, looking at celestial mansions before coming back down. At other times, he burrowed deep beneath the earth to visit various regions in hell. There he felt profound pity for its unfortunate inhabitants, all experiencing the grievous consequences of their previous actions. Watching these events unfold, he often lost all perspective of the passage of time. In those days, he was still uncertain whether these scenes were real or imaginary. He said that it was only later on, when his spiritual faculties were more mature, that he was able to investigate these matters and understand clearly the definite moral and psychological causes underlying them. Any lapse in concentration as his chitta converged into calm created an opening through which it could again focus outward to perceive such phenomena. His newfound proficiency notwithstanding, if his attention turned outward, his chitta would be off in a flash. Acariya Mun told us that early on, due to inexperience with the mercurial nature of his own mind, when focusing his chitta to examine the lower half of his body, instead of following the various parts down to the soles of his feet, it would shoot out through his lower torso and penetrate deep into the earth, just as Acariya Sao had so astutely remarked. No sooner had he hurriedly withdrawn the cheetah back into his body than it would fly through the top of his head, soaring high into the sky, where it paced back and forth contentedly, showing no interest in returning to his body. Concentrating with intense mindfulness, he had to force the cheetah to re-enter the body and perform the work he wanted it to do. In those early days, his mind developed a tendency to drop so speedily into a state of calm, like falling from a cliff or down a well, that his mindfulness couldn't keep up with it. Resting only briefly in complete stillness before withdrawing slightly to the level of upachara samadhi, his cheetah tended to venture out so often and experience such a variety of strange things that he became very frustrated. He tried to force it to remain inside the confines of his body, but often to no avail. His cheetah was far too fleeting for mindfulness and wisdom to keep pace. Still too inexperienced to work out an effective solution, he felt uneasy about the direction of his meditation. Yet, being a strictly internal matter, he couldn't mention his predicament to anyone else. So, with an intense degree of mindfulness and wisdom to guide his efforts, he experimented with many different techniques, suffering considerable mental strain before finding a viable means of controlling his adventuresome cheetah. Once he clearly understood the correct method of taming his dynamic mind, he found that it was versatile, energetic, and extremely quick in all circumstance. Eventually, working in unison, mindfulness and wisdom blended so well with the cheetah that they merged to become one with it. Thus strengthened, the cheetah functioned like a magic crystal ball, and he was fully capable of keeping pace with all the myriad phenomena arising within it. Acariya Mun possessed a bold, fearless character. He was also extremely intelligent. Because his rigorous training methods differed significantly from ones practiced by other monks, his style of practice was unique and incredibly difficult to imitate. From my own observations, I can unequivocally state he was a truly noble character with a quick, adventurous mind who trained himself with uncompromising resolve. His harsh training methods were often quite unique. He had an ingenious way of mixing coercive pressure and gentle persuasion to tame a dynamic mind that at the least lapse of concentration ventured out to find things that could easily cause him problems. Struggling desperately on his own to find ways to control his unruly mind, practicing without a dependable guide and enduring difficulties, Acariya Mun sometimes felt that he was beating his head against a mountain. Unlike so many others, he had to manage without the aid of a wise teacher's proven meditation methods, a disadvantage he often warned others against later on. To his students, he always emphasized his readiness to clarify any problems they experienced in meditation, thus saving them the difficulty of having to waste time as he had in his early years. And we're going to go ahead and end there today. We are at the very top, finishing a paragraph on page 22. The first full paragraph will be the beginning of the next recording because it takes a little bit of a turn, and I think this is an appropriate place to stop today. So, until next time, with metta, bye-bye.